You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com, thechrisvossshow.com. Welcome to the big show, my family and friends. We certainly appreciate you guys being here. What would we ever do with or without you? Well, I don't know. With or without you? Is this like a song? With or without you? Clearly, I can't sing, and that's why I do podcasting, ladies and gentlemen. The Chris Voss Show. You're part of the family that loves you, but doesn't judge you harshly. At least not as much as your father does when he looks at you with those disappointed eyes going, where did I go wrong? No, I'm sure your father's a wonderful gentleman. He's just still disappointed. He's like, oh, man, what was I thinking? Anyway, guys, you're part of a family that loves you and doesn't judge you. And in the meantime, help support that family by going to iTunes.com/Chris Voss, YouTube.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on TikTok, and subscribe to the LinkedIn newsletter. What an amazing gentleman on the show, and he's got a cool new book out that I think most people are going to like. And if you don't, well, maybe you should read it, and then you might find out if you'll like it. He's the author of the newest book that came out, or else, damn it. He's the author of the newest book that came out March 31st, 2023, called Junkworld, the Ballad of Leroy Brown. M.K. Stangeland is on the show with us today. We're going to be talking to him about his latest book and all the stuff that went into it and all that good stuff. In the meantime, let's get into a little bit about him and what he has done. He is a writer from Southeast South Dakota. He keeps himself busy with multiple occupations, among them his budding writing career and serving as assisted living for his grandma. Michael is a fan of enjoyable stories in their multiple forms, including but not limited to books, movies, television, comics, theaters, and RPGs. Junkworld, The Ballad of Leroy Brown, is his first published novel, and it will certainly not be his last. That sounds like a great promise or a threat. I'm not sure which. We'll find out. Welcome to the show, Michael. How are you?
Yes, hello. Thank you for that introduction. Thank you for having me on.
And thank you for coming on. It's wonderful to have you. Give us your .coms, wherever you want people to find you on the road, sir.
Well, I recognize this is one of those, flaws for someone who is a writer and trying to get out there, but I actually have kind of minimal social media presence right now. So I think the best option for people who want to look into what I'm here for is if you can go to Goodreads and look up Junkworld, the Ballad of Leroy Brown there. Hopefully, being here today, I'll convince people that, hey, this is something I should go look out. And even better is that if you go look at it on Goodreads, it'll have a bunch of links where there's online sites for purchasing a copy.
There you go. Goodreads is a great place to be. In fact, our podcast ports everything to Goodreads. It automatically sends every episode to Goodreads and shows up on our blog over there. So, very good place. We love the Goodreads. In fact, I think we give away a lot of books on Goodreads, come to think of it. So people follow them over there. And then, so give us an idea of what's in the book. Give us like a 30,000 overview of this book. What type of, what genre is it, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, it is primarily a science fiction book, but it's also got a bunch of other elements in there. I kind of think of it. It may be weird to think about on the surface, but in a sense, at its core, there's a bit of a sports story element, but then around it, it's got action, it's got adventure, it's got military, and of course, it's all wrapped up in a science fiction story. So, Junkworld, The Ballad of Leroy Brown, it's about a robot, a combat robot, arena fighter. You know, if you've ever seen something like BattleBots or the movie Real Steel, you might have some idea about what's going on. You know, you have two robots, they go into an arena and they try and break each other. So, at the start of the story, you have the title character Leroy Brown, and he has basically just become undefeated champion, and he's doing great. However, naturally, robots go in, they need maintenance, and when he's reactivated from getting shut down for maintenance, he discovers he's on, and then he's somewhere else entirely, and he has no idea what's going on. He discovers he's on this planet called Junkworld, which is basically a giant garbage dump, a giant scrap heap where people send machines that they don't want anymore, And
sounds like the story of my life.
So naturally, given where he was at beforehand, he is certain that this is a mistake. And so he makes it his mission to go back. Mm-hmm. Now, while this is happening, he draws the attention of a robot called the Top Dog. And this is a robot that he's a mechanized tyrant that is trying to conquer the planet. He's a pretty bad dude. Now, he learns about Leroy, and for reasons that only the Top Dog knows about, he wants Leroy brought to him alive. So naturally, you wind up having Leroy's mission to go back home intersecting with this fight against the Top Dog that is trying to conquer the planet. And those intertwine, and it brings the story together, and it eventually leads to certain twists and reveals of things maybe not being the way that they might first appear.
A plot twist, as they say, or something like that. So Junkworld, why? Let's dig into the title a little bit. The Ballad of Leroy Brown. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't this a song from the 70s?
Yes, I think the musician Jim Craw. I think I could be wrong.
Croce,
I think
something like that. Yeah. I don't know either. Among
the songs he composed, he's recorded was "Bad Leroy Brown." Baddest man in the whole. So that is actually. That is where I took the name from. It is a direct reference to it. It's, the character doesn't necessarily share a whole lot of personality traits, but Leroy Brown, the robot, he is pretty good at, he is pretty good at fighting people. So there is definitely, the name, it's applied pretty well.
Mm-hmm. There you go. So, why did you choose it? What drew you to it?
You mean to the title?
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say there's any specific draw, but going back to what I mentioned, the things of like combat robots and that, one of the cultural things is that people who build these robots, they often have names that they're either kind of minor jokes that you can still say normally, or they may be referenced to other thing. And I kind of played into that a little bit when I was creating this character, where I was thinking, what's a good name for a really tough robot? And I'd say that's a song. Because it is a pretty good song. And I thought, hey, this works out pretty well. I can take it and apply it to Leroy Brown. And
there you go. It has a kind of stickiness to it, Leroy Brown, especially if you've heard the song. I'm singing in my head right now because I used to have a tape of it back from much my younger years, about when I was about 5 years ago when I was very young, and so it sticks with me. So it's set in this science fiction sort of format. And kind of battle bots. Are there any humans in it, or is it pretty much the only chapter in which there are non-robot characters are in the prologue, which is showing the life that Leroy is living before he gets sent there, which is an essential chapter because it's hard to get a full understanding of it's harder to get an understanding of, hey, why does Leroy want to go back if you don't know what he's going back to? So you have that,
But then once you get to Junkworld, the whole rest of the story, every single character in it is a robot. It's all, and part of what I do make reference into there to help because one of the important things of when you're setting up twists is making sure you have ground rules, or you're not lying to the audience, and maybe giving them pieces so that, maybe they'll just go along, but then there are also the readers who are going to be trying to figure out what's going on. Mm-hmm. And one of the pieces I put in here to help establish that the twist is, and say, hey, this is the same planet, but distant in the future, is make reference to the fact that, this is a planet where no biological life has ever lived. So there's a certain element of, yes, they found this uninhabitable planet and decided, we can't do much else with it. Let's dump our junk there. So
wow, it's kind of crappy. It's like, hey, dump C-3PO and R2-D2 over there, eh?
Yeah. It's a planet where the only characters in it are robots, and there's they built a bit of a civilization for themselves out of, they're not wanted anymore, but they want to have a purpose. So the ones that are reactivated, they've just tried to find that purpose for themselves.
I know some bots that are humans that need a purpose. So there you go. But that's a different story for another time.
Yeah.
So what are some of your sources of inspiration that helped guide you through the book, or maybe want to write this story?
Well, unfortunately, it feels sometimes like I'm just, beating the same drum when I'm trying to talk about that stuff, because oftentimes it does go back to, what is the main inspiration? Well, I've already said it, like it's BattleBots. Because that's really where, because the way this story worked out, the character of Leroy Brown was actually created first, and there was a certain element of, this world he came from that came first. Mm-hmm. And that came from, my love of BattleBots, and especially the revival that started up a few years ago. And then, Junkworld, tossing him into that, I kind of had to build that up. There are certain, as far as, the whole picture, I'd say there's a lot of different pieces here and there that, that various inspiration comes from. So there's not necessarily one big inspiration for the rest of it, but there's pieces that other things there I've gotten. Like one of the more out there examples is that in the book there is, for a short time, there's this giant mechanized spider walker that is an example of, here's one of the things that these robots are building out of spare parts to continue their lives.
Wow.
Okay. Now, where I got that from and why I decided to put in the book is I'm looking for something to fill a certain role, and where do I go to? Well, for people who might remember that back in, like, I think maybe 98 or the late 90s, there was the Wild Wild West movie with, starring Will Smith. And one of the big things in there was that giant metal spider. And I know a lot of people don't like that movie, but as someone who's growing up as a kid, you got that giant metal spider, and I'm thinking, hey, that's pretty cool. So one of those things is, when I'm looking for certain elements, I can take this thing that I find is cool, and I can find a role for it, provided I can make it fit naturally into the story. And it's kind of funny because I don't remember exactly names, but my understanding is that there's a producer of that movie, and he also was responsible for the Nicolas Cage Superman movie that didn't happen, that was supposed to have a giant spider. And there's a part of me that's thinking, he has this obsession with giant spiders that don't go well, and there's a part of me mentally imagining him going yes, vindication.
Yeah. I think didn't one of the directors and producers of some of the Silent Bob movies, he was fairly critical of that show. I think he did a stage bit one time where he told the story about how they brought on the director, and the director's like, we're going to do this. I think they were trying to do it with Batman or something too.
Yeah.
And he's like, what? So there you go. But at least it's in your book. So there you go.
Well, I mean, I fully understand why people would criticize him for that. And like, yeah, I mean, making a giant spider the main villain of a Superman movie, yeah, I can get it. That's pretty stupid.
Yeah.
But at the same time, as an individual element, you know, I look at the movie and I see this giant robot spider and I think, hey, yeah, the giant robot spider, that's pretty cool. So, you know, if I can fit it in naturally into this story, why not take this thing I feel is cool? Because as they say, you know, good artists, you know, great artists steal.
That's true. That's true. I mean, it's all creative swiping, I think, when it really comes down to it anyway, right?
Yeah. I mean, the real thing is, how do you do the implementation? Is the implementation knockoff, or have you managed to take these previous pieces and put them together to make something that together is fully new?
Mm-hmm. There you go. So let me ask you this. What motivated you want to become a writer? I imagine you've been writing for some time, and usually people leave that up and then finally do a book. Yeah,
well, I've got sort of two halves to that, because there was an initial spark of writing when I was a real young kid, where I really didn't know what I was doing, but some of my earliest memories of writing is stuff that I didn't even write myself. I told the story to my mom, and then my mom would put the actual words, and then I do some scribbles. A couple examples are like this story called The Flying Trees. I did like a couple of those, which was basically my family, but as trees that could uproot and fly around.
Oh.
I mean, for young kid, real simple stuff. And then another major example is that growing up, me and my brothers were big fans of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So we did what was basically the equivalent of fan fiction, just short stories. Amusingly, I'm pretty sure one of them involves the turtles going back in time to the dinosaurs and fighting dinosaurs, which is kind of funny when I consider that what's one of the big recurring elements of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Turtles in time. So there was an extended period there where writing wasn't a main focus, but what really picked it up again was when I was in college. And are you familiar with the web series Red versus Blue?
No.
Okay. It's, long story short, these guys took the Halo video game and basically used it as an animation engine. You know, they made the characters move. They put voiceover on it. Within Halo, at least, there's. I mean, it's a big thing. I mean, they attracted the attention of the guys behind Halo and everything. So, at that, I think there was an extended period, and even now, certain where, in a sense, my main focus is in movies and film. But the thing is, at its core, all of it involves storytelling. I mean, some movies can get away with spectacle over story, but at the end of the day, the best movies, even when they are mainly spectacle, have good stories. And so as an individual, what put me focused on writing is that, writing, in book form, and that's the one that's kind of, that's the one that requires, the least large investment. It's easiest to get into. Like, it takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of equipment to make a movie or, a TV show or any of that stuff. A novel, anyone with a keyboard, something to write on, you can go ahead and write a book. So anyways, I digress. So anyways, this Red versus Blue series, and watching this, I'm thinking, I want to do this. So what wound up happening is I wound up writing basically a full season's worth of scripts, but episodes like 2, 3, 4 minutes long, which could have served as the basis of the same type of show. Now, that show never actually got made, even though I had these scripts. But the important thing from that is that writing that, and I also wrote a stage play in college, and those things right there, those got me back into the groove of writing and started me on the trend to where I am right now.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So what's your process as a writer? Some people have different processes on how they write. Sometimes they write in the morning, at least an hour a day. Some people just drink a lot of coffee. Ernest Hemingway, I think, drank a lot of vodka or something. I don't know what he was drinking, but evidently there was something. What's your process?
Well, the process I found for me is a lot of times I will, before I put anything to page, I'll oftentimes have what effectively amounts to kind of a first draft or outline that basically forms all in my head. I have an idea of what I'm doing before I actually write anything. Then from there, I might write an outline. I'll probably write an outline, like get details down. Then I'll go into first draft, second draft, depending on how you count it. And a lot of times I may be doing writing when I'm not even actually writing, where I do a lot of it. I do a lot of writing and figuring out details in my head. Like I'm at work, if I'm doing just main things that, do require attention, but it's not hard brain work. Mm-hmm. And from there, as far as when I'm at the keyboard, it can really vary. I might find opportunities to sit outside and write. I might just be at the computer. So there's a lot of variety. The book I'm currently working on that's currently in draft form, that one I actually tried a different format where I think it's been described as some people will have everything planned out and then some people will just go at it and see what they see what comes out on the page. Mm-hmm. For the one I'm currently working on, I actually did try the approach of, just see what comes out on the page. But then I get maybe one chapter, 1.5 chapters, and I'm thinking, I'm seeing a lot of parallels or connective pieces that might pull inspiration from, a book that exists, a famous book that exists. So then I paused that and went back and I read a bunch of various other books, kind of went down some rabbit holes. And then in a sense, even though I tried to start going in with an approach of just see what happens, I wound up coming up with an outline in my head anyway. So
there you go. That's one way to do it, man. What were some of the challenges that you run into in maybe some people run into they can't write. What are some of the big challenges that you find and deal with when you're writing?
I'd say one of the biggest challenges is knowing what's good as is and what does need change, because it's very, very difficult for anyone to actually get, realistically speaking, any first draft is going to need a rewrite. It's going to need editing and all that. Thing is, it's hard to tell, what of this do I have that needs to change, and what do I have that's good as is? And there is a certain element where the process I use, sometimes I wonder if, that plays into it, because a lot of stuff I'm working on, I'm forming my head, so the stuff that in my head, it changes when it gets to the page. So there's very much a question of, what do I have that's good? What do I have that the stuff that I like, what if it actually needs to go despite me liking it? And what are the stuff? So there's very much a question of making sure I have a good product, that I'm not editing it into a state of something bad. And what should I hold on to? What needs to go? Because it may need editing, but it's not just editing, it's also making sure you're editing it right. And, sometimes, even though I'm not, you hear stories about projects that get ruined by editors, get ruined by publishers, get ruined by producers. Now, sometimes those changes from those people up top are actually good things.
Yeah.
And sometimes people making the actual product, they can have bad ideas. They can have, so there's a lot going on there of not knowing what is the right decision.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And, you got to find the right editor, right people, all that sort of good stuff. What advice would you give to other writers who want to be writing? You've written your first book. It sounds like you're working on something else. We'll get to it here in a second. What are some other things that you've seen, your advice you give to others?
I'd say one of the big ones that I've come across that I think really is really true is that experience is the best teacher. Where does the best inspiration come from? Stuff in real, just lived experiences. And always have your eyes open for inspiration. And in that sense, well, the more you're exposing your eyes to, the more variety of stuff the more you have to go from, the more inspiration you're going to pull from, and the more it's very much a matter of if you're just sitting in your room not doing anything. Like I said before, best artists steal. There's borrowing and stealing, but what are you going to borrow and steal from for your book if you're not exposing yourself to anything?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. You've got to definitely have that exposure. Yeah. So let me ask you this. You've alluded to you're working on some other projects. Can you tease out some of that?
Well, the one I'm working on right now is it's a bit of an interesting thing, because I am effectively taking a bunch of more classical stories and kind of it's basically trying to stick them together in a way that makes sense. I've kind of if I can remember correctly, kind of humorously referred to it as like Dante presents Alice's journey to see the wizard at the center of the crystal.
From Dante's Inferno?
I did in fact wind up reading that as part of that. That is one of the rabbit holes I went down. Let me tell you,
rabbit holes.
Well, yeah, but let me tell you, it is not an easy book to read. I got this copy that has like notes, and I still struggle. I had to go through it like twice to figure it out. But that's currently what I'm working on. It's a fantasy story, but I've also got a few other projects that I've previously tried previously tried going through the traditional process. And the big thing is none of these stories were stories that I could get literary agents interested in. So my approach was, when no other literary agent, no one was interested, okay, I still have confidence in this, so I'm just going to set it aside for now, and then maybe someday, if I have proper, clout in that, I can go back and get a second approach. So I've got two, three, depending on how, books that are arguably ready in some state, and then beyond that, I've got I got a buttload of story ideas. So when I say, this is not going to be my last book, absolutely not. Realistically speaking, my approach is that it's a weird thing to say, but you have people think about what are you going to do for retirement and all that. And my approach is, well, realistically, if I could pull it off, I don't want to retire. I just want to wind up in a situation where I'm just writing books. Maybe someday, if I'm successful enough, maybe try my hand at stuff like movies and that. But it would be a matter of, I just want to be making this stuff so that I'm I die and I've got my last book coming out, or maybe I have a book that's half finished. The
last book.
Yeah,
the last book of Michael Stangeland.
Yeah.
But that's the beautiful thing about writing is it's mostly in your mind, and a lot of people we have on the show, we have some people that I think are in their 80s that have been on the show, and they've written 60 books, and you can kind of keep writing. It's much different than if you're trying to do bricklaying. That's much harder to do at 80.
Yeah, and I would say, and age really isn't. As long as you've got your mind intact, age isn't a thing. In fact, I'd say there are like two individuals I think to as far as age that really have been a bit of a minor point of inspiration for me. You've got kind of two distinct points. You've got Alan Rickman and Ulysses S. Grant, and my thought is like both of them in their respective fields, they kind of got, in a sense, a late start for really being who they are. Alan Rickman, he got a late start into acting, but he became a big name, and he could still be a big thing, if he hadn't passed when he did. And then Ulysses S. Grant, I read a biography of him once, and it made a point of saying that if he had died like at 30, 35 or somewhere in there, like before he turned 40, he would be just a footnote in history of that. Like, he had a military career before that, but it was only when he was up there and the Civil War broke out that he really became something. And I look at those, and that really does inspires me that, yes, there are limitations to age. The body does degrade as you get older, but there is really as long as you are alive, there is still opportunity for you. There is still a chance to do something with your life.
There you go. I'm 55, so I'm still trying to figure that out.
Well, there you go. So
I'm glad the opportunity is there. What was the old line from The Treasure of the Sierra Madre with Bogey? You're still young enough. You have plenty of times to chase other fortunes in life, or something to that effect. Somebody can quote it at the end of the movie, but it's a beautiful line. So, Michael, this has been really insightful and fun to have you on. Sounds like you've written an exciting book. Might make a good screenplay for a movie, because everyone likes robots and movies. And, there's probably a lot of AI Terminator type movies that are coming out soon with AI that, talk about machines and there are soon to be overlords, if you will. Yeah,
it has not been lost on me that as I've finally gotten this book that is all about robots out there for people to read, what's happening? Well, we've got AI being a big issue. So
yeah. And there you go. There might be some plots for the further one. So on your next project, do you think you're going to continue a series with this book, or maybe write a standalone of a whole different nature?
Well, the best answer I can give for this book is a very solid maybe.
There you go.
On the one, I think the main points of inspiration for potential sequels came about where, when I was still in the process of looking for a literary agent, one of the things I kept in mind is that oftentimes, if you do have success, there are going to be people, the people who print it, if it is successful, they're going to be looking for sequels. So I did spark some ideas. The thing is, I'm not sure how many of those ideas are ideas I'm really happy with, and how many of them are just, if this book need a sequel, well, at least I've got something working for me. So I think the real question is, one, if this book does manage to go on and be a big hit, because I am still working towards, getting word out there, getting people knowing about it. Mm-hmm. So it would be a case of, one, would there actually be demand for it? And two, do I have a story idea I really like? Because it's one thing to put out a sequel, give people more of this and of these characters. It's another thing to give people a sequel that won't have them wishing that it had stayed with one, had stayed to one edition. Because how often do we see that of, hey, I want more of this. Mm-hmm. Oh, wait, I guess we didn't want more of it because the more we got of it, not so happy. Yeah. So, but strangely enough, the strongest idea I've latched onto that I would like is, I mentioned the top dog, the character. Mm-hmm. The strongest idea I have in my head is to, do more with him, like go back and follow, his lead up to getting where he is as the story opens. Because it's a weird situation where when I think about this book and think like, what are my favorite parts of it? I find, strangely enough, most of those moments in that involve the top dog in some way. So
maybe he's a spinoff.
Well, yeah, that would be some. I mean, that is that strange thing where the most interest I have is for the villain, which if I'm looking to try and convince people, hey, there's another sales point. If you like good villains, hey, this book, I am really confident that the villain of this book is a great villain.
There you go. Bad robots. Always the best kind. So this has been really insightful, Michael, to have you on. Give us your .coms. Where do you want people to find you on the interwebs again?
Well, I'd say right now, I mean, I recognize it's not the ideal situation where I kind of have a, but long story short, again, the best place to go looking up this book, both, if you want to see, want to look into it more, maybe find an opportunity if you're interested, is going to the Goodreads page for it. I'm just, more than anything, I'm directing people more to this book, and because, what social media presence I do have, there's not really anything there. So my attitude is more, hey, if I can get people interested in the book is really the product. People aren't buying me. They are buying, I'm not the entertainer. The book is the entertainer. So I figure, if people are going to the book, look up the, Junkworld on Goodreads, or, just go look for it at your favorite online retailer, find Junkworld, the Ballad of Leroy Brown. And, I figure that if the book is successful, then I will, I'll have a larger presence because of it.
There you go. Well, it's been wonderful to have you on, Michael. Thank you very much for coming on.
Yes, and again, thank you for having me on, and thank you for this conversation.
There you go. So pick up the book, folks, wherever fine books are sold. Stay away from those alley bookstores because they're dangerous, damn it. You can injure yourself or get mugged.
Well, yeah, but that, hopefully, because that is going, one of the things is that right now there isn't a lot of presence. I am very much trying to get people to know about this book. So hopefully if enough people buy it online, then that'll show people, hey, physical retailers, you want a book that's going to bring people in, that'll get you a business? Hey, maybe you should stock this and you'll have people come in for it.
There you go. Order up wherever fine books are sold. March 31st, 2023, it came out. Junkworld, The Ballad of Leroy Brown by M.K. Stangeland. And check it out, enjoy it, and order up. And, of course, Christmas is coming, so you might want to take and get some extra copies you can give away as gifts as well. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, YouTube, and Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. You know the drill, folks. You've been here for 15 years. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you guys next time. And that's